Hello, everybody. I'm going to read from my book, and I'm going to read some passages here. This is Police Passion, featuring Max Bird, a real parrot. "Look, Max," Janice said, "even though you are a bird of the hookbill species, you might be interested in knowing the two-lane highway in front of our showroom service drive could have been the approach to an American tourist town back in the 1940s. That is, if it were for the highway's ill-placed speed bumps and signs in Spanish." "Hookbill species," Maestro Francisco commented when he joined us in the courtyard. "Cripes, how flutin' is that?" "And Janny, when our neighbor came over last week, I heard you say that you were our goose. What did you mean?" "I don't know. Must have been what was in the sangria," I laughed. "Would that make Max a goose parrot, a Mexican gringo, or an anomaly?" Francisco asked. "I am an anomaly for sure," I replied, "and yet sometimes I yearn to have Caucasian cream skin like Janny's." "I understand. Those cream skin seems to have all the money." "I like my feathers, and since I don't have pockets, I don't need money. However, I do dream of having hands, Maestro." Francisco gave my wish some thought before he replied, "I am a weaver. That's who I am. Life would be less if we didn't have dreams. However, yearning to be something we are not is a long road to nowhere. I am a bird with good moral character. I am brave and fearless. I want to become a police officer. Janny says I need to face reality. The reality is I need a paying job. We haven't sold enough of our weavings here to make a profit." "But the gallery needs you to continue being its public director," Francisco said. "The police department needs me to help them with their public relations. Sometimes I wonder if we will ever be able to stop clipping your wings, Max." I took my position atop Francisco's shoulder when he hammered iron stakes between the cobblestones of our highway service drive. They were about 20 feet apart, enough to stretch warp for like 3 of our original weavings. We paced back and forth, 365 times, the maestro's arm holding onto a weighty spool of warp, keeping it taut, so that each strand would have the same amount of tension. Each 20 minutes or so, we would wind off the end of the warp and take a break. I took a peck from the customary carrot Francisco kept clenched between his teeth when doing this strenuous task. Sergeant Garcia and his group's mud-spattered police vehicle pulled up in front to take advantage of the hose the gardener next door had left running. What luck! I quivered in anticipation. "Good afternoon, officers," I said in my most profound warble. "What a wonderful day to wash a police vehicle." say that parrot talks. Did you hear him talk? The sergeant asked his recruit. Oh, nunca. Nunca, the recruit replied, shiftily casting his eyes about. I don't think we should let that parrot talk to us that way. He's talking to us like we're his buddies. Still perched on Francisco's shoulder, salute style, I tucked in my feathers and expanded my lungs to full capacity. I have not been a police officer, I said. However, I have been known in the past for my valor. I was captured by criminals, a syndicate of poachers with first-class technological equipment, but I escaped, and I am now here to be of assistance to you in capturing these outlaws, I told them in my best garble. What does valor mean? The recruit, who was the youngest son of the chief's favorite sister, quipped. Does that mean I have to share my coke with that bird? Sarge, is it okay if I answer when he talks? He does talk, doesn't he? Can I take your place when you retire? The recruit continued. The Sarge made an effort to hide his chagrin. He was none too happy about being saddled with keeping his recruit out of trouble. Don't know how you can be promoted without years of seniority, he flatly answered. But I do, I twerped. I know how you can get promoted to be sergeant even before he retires. How? The recruit answered, taking a step closer, his inquiring eyes wide and eager. Listen carefully. This is the deal, I said. A van the color of pewter will be packed with contraband birds snatched from the wild. The driver will unload their, what they call, crop in front of the warehouse in the San Juan Market in Guadalajara. And only I can recognize that vehicle because I was in it. Twitching his upper lip, the sergeant intervened. We're here to wash our police vehicle, not to socialize, so get at it, he told the recruit. But it's lunchtime, Chief. And the chief says we'll get a half-hour break. Well, to give the effect of being a tough parrot, I had Francisco leave me on the hood of the police vehicle. I looked down upon him and the officers taking a break. What a dumb idea that was. The sun came out behind a cloud. Cripes. In no time, that hood became as hot as burnt embers. Would I soon be roasted to resemble little more than a missing hood ornament on a police vehicle? With pride held in reserve, I squared my wing struts up straight, and with as much volume as I could muster, I called out, "Good job, men. This police vehicle sure shines," folding a wing over my heart so as not to expose my panic. Francisco, the sergeant and recruit, slurping on soft drinks, leaned against a jacaranda tree in the soft grass beside the service drive. I was about to topple over when they rescued me. I had the fortitude to make a closing statement, however, before I passed out. This clean police vehicle now gives respect to the Chapala Police Department and the citizens of this county for which it serves, I said. Yes, sirree, I give thanks to the eagles above and to those who rescued me. For they not only saved me from an unthinkable fate, but also from humiliation. I was biding my time atop the loom, greeting the neighbors who walked past our studios the next time the Sarge came by. It's my day off. Do you have time for a visit? He asked. What luck! What incredible luck! Let's sit in the courtyard, just the two of us. I sure would like to know more about police work. Being a police officer is not a glamorous job, Max, the Sarge confided. It's not even particularly exciting. I suspect you have more excitement living in your art compound here than I have on my job. Excuse me, Sergeant, in all due respect to you and your profession, it's not what I want to hear about, I replied in profound disappointment. Would you like to go out with me and see what police work is really about? You would do that for me? For Max Bird? Just a common parrot? The following morning, I hopped into the scout car and onto the recruit's shoulder. We got a report about an old woman and her Pomeranian thumbing their nose again at the long, good citizens of this community, the sergeant behind the wheel reported with an ominous smile. She thought that since her vehicle was electric, she was entitled to use the bicycle path. The License Bureau had drilled a hole in her cart's fiberglass frame and attached motorcycle plates. As you must know, motorcycles are never allowed on the biciclopista. But still, that doesn't stop her. This morning, he continued, that woman sailed on by one of our policemen when he stopped traffic, almost running him over. Her Pomeranian leaned out of a seat, and of course there was no door. Snarling and baring his teeth at the officer, she laughed and speeded up. The dispatcher said the tassels on her cart's roof swung back and forth when she escaped. The cart woman's dog took a bite out of my cousin's bicycle tire, the recruit added, and he fell off. And she tossed him 20 pesos. Yes, she did, boss. Yes, she did. The chief says our hands are tied because she's a tourist. But on my way to work this morning, I saw her going down Jacaranda Road. She had a flowered hat strapped on her head with a scarf, and her dog had on a plaid vest. I am a respected police sergeant of long standing. I will let the likes of her humiliate me, as well as the rest of the good officers in this community. The sergeant hadn't driven more than a mile when I saw the cart woman up ahead. There she is, I screeched, hopefully not digging my eager claws into the recruit's shoulder. Whoop, 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 the police siren sounded when Sergeant Garcia enthusiastically picked up speed, then braked just behind the cart woman. Pulling over, she waited for us, eager to challenge the sergeant head on with another confrontation. "Buenos dias, Senora," the sergeant said. "I see you have a plate on your cart. Guess you won't be driving on the pista no more. About your dog, however, I notice he doesn't have a seatbelt on. I will have to give you a ticket." The Pomeranian who sat beside her bared his teeth at Sergeant Garcia. "Oh, no, that was the wrong thing for that dog to do." "Where were you headed, Senora?" the sergeant asked. "To my bridge club, but I suppose you don't know what that is, so let me explain it to you." "Now, Senora, are you insulting a police officer?" the old sergeant replied. "No, sir," the cart woman snickered before she realized the game had changed, that the sergeant was now playing with a stacked deck. As a parrot, it's a challenge to understand human behavior, especially when their senses are askew and they've flung logic into the trash. The sergeant cleared his throat. "I'm going to put an end to the cart woman's harassment once and forever. She will never dare make a dig at a police officer again." "Excuse me, Sergeant Garcia," I interrupted. "The old woman doesn't mean any harm. She just does dumb things. I know you are a kind man. Can't you let her go with just a warning?" "The Senora knows exactly what she's up to, Mr. Bird," the sergeant glared. The cart woman tightened her thin lips even more. Yes, sirree. As quick as the flip of a coin, the game was over and she lost, and she knew about it. "How about a tip? Say 500 pesos, she pleaded. "Take the money," I cried. "That's a lot of money," I told the sergeant, hoping to spare the crazy old woman. "I wouldn't take that money from that law-breaking woman if I was a criminal," the sergeant, on the brink of a total loss of self-control, barked. "Her intent is to run us down with her cart, and she will pay the consequence, and that goes for her plaid-vested companion, too." "That dog is like a baby to her, and maybe all the family she's got," I said. Nothing could be heard except the whizzing of cars on the highway and the ensuing moment of silence. "You should be charged with animal abuse, lady," the sergeant sarcastically said, "but I will let you go. I am, however, taking your precious mutt into the animal shelter for his own protection. He looks like a purebred something to me. The pound ought to be able to find him a good home in no time at all." "You expose that poor, fancy, innocent, dolled-up dog of yours to danger with no seatbelt on, not even a door to keep him from falling out when he snarls at police officers, and..." Well, the cart woman panicked when she comprehended the full extent of what the sergeant was saying. "No! You can't take my baby away from me," she screamed, clutching her precious animal to her bosom. The dumb recruit impulsively grabbed the Pomeranian, trying to wrestle it from his grip. The sergeant turned away. In his emotional state, he had foolishly not thought far enough ahead to figure out he, or the dumb recruit, could pry the dog away from the woman. The recruit yanked at the dog's hind legs while the woman with her mutt were glued together, chest to breast, both crying in a pitiful wail that echoed out into the street. I felt my heart would break at the sounds of their combined howling. In a rage, I flew at the recruit, flapping my wings hard, and in a sharp staccato that echoed down the street, screeched, "This is not right. This is just not right. She is just a crazy old woman. Let her go. Let her go." My wings were just a blur between the recruit's yanking arms, the dog barring his teeth in the woman's kicking leg. Feathers were flying. The recruit grabbed for the dog's front leg. It bit him. Blood ran down the front of his new police shirt. He screamed, "I'll get you for this, you stupid mutt. You can't get away with biting me." My beak tore into the recruit's shirt with a rapidity that was amazing, ripping it open, exposing the recruit's flesh. When I saw blood on my feathers, I yanked even more, adrenaline surging until the recruit's police shirt was in ribbons. The senorita's wails became torment as she continued screaming, "My baby! My baby, don't take my baby away!" Even though the recruit was the son of the chief's favorite sister, the Sarge knew he and the recruit were headed for a reprimand if this did not quickly come to an end. Outraged drivers slowed down and began tooting their horns of indignation of the brutal sight. Traffic began to pile up on the highway. "Let go of the dog, you dumbass! Halt, recruit, halt!" the sergeant ordered. The old woman and her dog ran toward their cart. The Pomeranian's paws were wrapped around the cart woman's neck as she drove away. She held on to him with one arm as if he were a teddy bear, steering the silent cart into oncoming traffic that swerved to avoid her. Her hat became untied as she picked up speed, and the wind caught it. In her panic, she was probably unaware that it had left her head. It floated in the air before settling down on the shoulder of the road. Janny heard the commotion from a block away and came running. She held on to me, my feathers at school, exhausted, my adrenaline failing. We sat beside the road until I stopped shaking. Before making the sharp walk home, "I feel like reality has slapped me in the face," I squawked. The following day, wearing a plaid shirt and blue jeans, Sergeant Garcia was waiting for our gallery to open. "You could have been arrested for obstructing justice yesterday, Max," he informed me. "My inexperienced recruit could press charges, but he won't, because I told him to keep his mouth shut or there would be trouble. I must say, it's an unlikely setup you have here," he continued, his shifty eyes scanning our courtyard. "Very unlikely." Janice sat on a stool next to where Francisco stood weaving, but her attention was focused on the Sarge and me talking in the adjoining courtyard. "I was thinking I would like to go into business when I retire, Max," the Sarge said. "Maybe open up a private detective agency. I could use a bird like you, brave and with ears that could hear from a great distance." "And I speak English," I replied. The sergeant stared at Maria, the turtle who was lounging beside our pond. That is an illegal turtle, the sergeant pointed out. It is a living, thinking creature covered under wildlife's protection laws. Do we need to get a license for her, Sarge? I asked. Well, I came here as a friend, Max. I'm not on duty all of the time. Still, I must remind you that holding a wild creature hostage is illegal. What about me? I thought. I was a wild creature once. Yes, and what about you? The sergeant replied. I became aware of the narrow spacing of the bars on my cage, even though they were not at all constraining, as my cage had no door. Nevertheless, for the first time, they looked ominous. You might think I am a hostage like most parrots, but I'm not, Sarge. I am at the heart of this family. Yes, I see that. Maybe we could adapt my detective agency plan to include other household members, Garcia said, licking his chops when he smelled the aroma of chicken soup in the courtyard air and appreciating the well-tended flowers in the garden. Are you okay out there, Max? Janny hollered, apparently noticing the sergeant had taken a different posture than she had seen before. Yes, I replied. The sergeant and I are having a private conversation. In other words, mind your own business. However, she joined us instead. Sorry, I have to shorten your visit, men, but it's Maximo's nap time. Mortified, I dilated the pupils of my eyes in and out as a warning for Janny to back off. But no. She was in protective mode, and so nothing could stop her. And furthermore, her interference reinforced the sergeant's opinion that indeed I was a kept bird. When Janny went back inside, the sergeant said, I see your Patrona has you and Francisco fixed up mighty fine, Mr. Bird. If I were you, I might be satisfied to sacrifice my freedom to live here myself. Excuse me, Sergeant, I would never, ever call Janny my Patrona. But you are not free. You are a victim of your circumstances, and Janny and Francisco are the facilitators of your incarceration. Now, are you getting what I'm trying to tell you, Max? I am where I want to be, I told him. Trust me, do not deny yourself the truth, or you will be one sorry bird. You are only free within Janny's confines. If you try to escape, she will come looking for you, even if where you want to be is not with her. Isn't that right, Mr. Bird? Isn't that proof of what I'm trying to tell you? I was puzzled. The sergeant was acting strange, almost as if his body had been hiding another person inside. And yet, except for the stench of alcohol and the fact that he couldn't stand up straight, he was the same Sergeant Garcia. I could not disagree with the facts he laid out in front of me, facts that were very compelling. You can't gain altitude with your wings, feathers, clip, the sergeant just slurred. So you must head for the neighbor's cornfield and yes, escape. Climb its thorn stalk and nestle within its tassel. If yous kidnappers look up from them cornrows, their eyes will be blinded from the sun. I know the sergeant's cornstalk plan was somewhat overfetched, but it's only right for a sergeant of his stature to be able to imbibe in a little tequila on his day off. You'll never have another friend like me, Max. I'm just saying that if you ever do try to redeem your freedom, I will know where to find you. I trust your integrity in not betraying a trust like we have established here today, more so than I would of any human. Do you trust me? Yes, I lied. Good. When I open that detective agency, let's call it Senor Garcia and Max Bird Investigators, I see no reason why we can't gather information about those bird marketers before I retire, do you? After all, a bird is born to fly free. The sergeant took my extended wing in hand as he was leaving. I'm glad we had this visit today. I may not see you again for some time. You see, my wife is dying, Max. She needs me to help her through this sad period. I'm sure you understand. As a compassionate bird, I did understand. I also understand that I was going to keep the inside information about being partners in a detective agency tucked securely under my feathers. The thought of it gave me a buzz. But how can a bird that has just been presented with so much sadness and death be thinking of freedom? Whew! I was sure relieved when the sergeant and his bad news left. I threw out my wings and gave Francisco a surprise embrace when he came outside. What was that for? He laughed. What did you and the sergeant talk about when hanging out in the courtyard? Apprehending criminals, I chirped. A drink for you and a shower for you, Francisco teased as he swished the hose back and forth between the flowers, spraying a waterfall that made me feel giddy. I fluttered wildly in leaps of joy, water trickling down inside my feathers, wetting bare skin that gave me the tickles. In a response of pure pleasure, I began singing, let's fly away with me, our wings in touch or some romantic sea. I inhaled the smell of flower blossoms, noticed the fineness of the iridescent hummingbirds flitting through the vines. I looked into the tiny pond and saw the goldfish swimming and felt grateful. When the sun came directly over our walled-in world, obliterating the shadows within, my eyes began to droop. I dozed off in a delicious dream of a banquet of suet, pineapples, and mangoes, and almonds before me. I dreamed of the familiar smell of Janny and Francisco, the mingling of their familiar voices. Max sure sleeps a lot, Francisco said. It's all part of growing up, Janny replied. One day, Max dreams he is flying above the trees. The next day, he takes a nosedive. I listened and knew what she said was true. I also know that too often I felt hemmed in, too obligated, and resentful about my wings having been altered. Besides, maybe it was time Janice spiffed herself up. However, I was surprised when she took me up on the idea of getting to know the sergeant better. The sergeant is maybe 62, Janny confided. I won't lie to him about being older, but I could tell him I'm only 5 years older, which isn't really a lie, because I feel 5 years younger. After thinking it over, she continued, let's go shopping. I hopped on Francisco's shoulder and we were off. One dress Janny liked was 890 pesos, the other 940 pesos. The shoes, open-toed and sexy, were 790 pesos. It's a big purchase, she sighed. Of course, I will also need new undies and a manicure and hairstyling. How much is the skin tightening cream? Janny asked at the cosmetics counter. 490 pesos, the clerk replied. Janny's enthusiasm fizzled as fast as a prickle balloon. We could almost afford to fly to Cuba for that amount of money, she complained. Furthermore, when a woman is of age to need skin tightening cream to attract a man, it's time to hang it up. Hang up what? Francisco whispered as I sat on his shoulder. If I knew, I'd tell you, I replied. It was overcast the next time Sarge came by. Janny, I chirped. You would never guess who was downstairs. It's the sergeant. I saw him from the top of my cage walking along the road and whistling. He is here to visit you. I wish you hadn't asked him in, Max, Janny replied. I told him we were very sorry to hear about his wife dying. I went on in a high degree of excitement, twittering between sentences. I told him he needed the companionship of a good woman to help him through his grief. Isn't that right, Francisco? That's what he needs. I told him about you and that you had a need for romance. Come on, Janny, come tell him you're sorry about his wife dying. No, Janny replied. Oh, I understand. You want him to see you looking less natural. Or maybe tomorrow? Never, Janny replied. It's no fun being here around here anymore. Why can't we have more fun? Fun is not lasting, Max. Once you're done having it, it's over. Satisfaction is where it's at. Satisfaction stays with you. Feathers, I screamed in what Janny called a temper tantrum. I'm not going to tell the sergeant I'm going to tell the sergeant I want to live with him. And the next time you go to cut my wing feathers, I'm going to bite your fingers and I'm going to fly away. This time, Janny did not brush my words off lightly. Then pack up your feathers and go, smarty. Whoops. I'm sorry I said that, Max. I didn't really mean it. My mouth just ran off before my mind was in gear. I was shocked. How could she say that to me? I thought her love was infinite. I crawled back up on Francisco's shoulder, buried my beak deep into my own. breast feathers and wept. I don't know what's gotten into Max, I overheard Francisco tell Janny. His mood swings have sure gotten out of hand. What are we ever going to do with him? I know, Janny replied. She held me close to her heart in a tender embrace, smoothing the feathers of my violet crest with the pads of her warm fingers. She softly said, "It's his hormones. That's a sign he's leaving his adolescence behind in his way to become a mature bird." As if yours wasn't already stressed enough by my emotional upheavals, as well as being chewed on by nasty fleas that have taken over my cage, now I have to deal with the hormones. Can you imagine, Maximo would think, living Stop.
Keep it going. You can find it. I believe in you.
As if yours truly wasn't already stressed enough by my emotional upheaval, as well as being chewed on by nasty fleas that have taken over my cage. Now I have to deal with the hormones. Can you imagine, Maximo would think, living with a police sergeant would be more fun than living with a couple of artists? Janny said. "Francisco, please go explain to the sergeant in a very nice way that I am not interested. Tell him there is no need for him to come back." "I would be happy to," Francisco replied with a sigh of relief. How could we ever have thought Janny would be interested in romancing a man? She was above and beyond that. Francisco confided to me, obviously relieved Janny didn't want the sergeant, happy that she was content with us. "I could go for a glass of wine, a big glass," Janny said, "and Diet Cola for you, Francisco, and peanuts for Maximo. We can go up the stairs to the Mirador and watch the sun go down over the lake while we listen to music. Yes?" "But you said that fun was a waste of time." "We are not going up on the lookout to have fun, Max. We are going to celebrate. Joy and celebration, laughter and tears are as old as mankind." I could smell her sweetness when she cuddled up tight as we mounted the stairs. Francisco followed with a CD player and a bottle of wine. The angle of the sun cast moody shadows across the barrancas of Sierra Madre. It cast a warm glow on Janny, Francisco, and I while we stood on the lookout paying homage to this magnificent setting. A fisherman's boat could be seen heading in for the night on our volcanic lake, its hand-hewn hull smooth by the tides of time. After dinner that night, I felt great for the love the three of us shared. In a state of euphoria, I lay on my back on the kitchen table, my short bird legs suspended, feet splayed out flat, talons curled under. Oh, how we danced! To the moon, to the star, to the heavens that blessed our family. Oh, how good it felt to be part of Janny and Francisco, the bird part that made us such an unusual family. Francisco, holding my legs tight, leaned over the balustrade of our roofed mirador. He stretched his arm up high to hold me under an azure sky that went clear to the heavens. I flapped my wings with all my might and imagined the sky was all for me. I felt myself soaring, head facing the wind, braving it, and then dashing back and forth in a dance before Francisco withdrew his arm and I was safely back on the Mirador. I'm sorry we had to clip your flight feathers, he told me with tears in his eyes. Me too, I replied. When can we do a test flight again? That night, Janny and Francisco came to tuck me in. Have you ever seen a bird so sweet? Janny said. She partially folded the satin cover that made me feel safe at night, yet left enough of my cage uncovered while they adored me. Francisco put his warm palm on Janny's shoulder. They stood gazing at me in pride and wonder, the universal picture of proud parents everywhere. I opened my left eye a peek to bask in their bliss. I woke Francisco early the next morning singing, oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I'm full of weak, flapping feelings, but I'm not going to fly away. I haven't seen you test your wings without me holding you, Francisco said. Your flight fingers may have been grown out by now. I'm afraid to, maestro. When I flap my wings and begin to lift, caution stops me. If I start flying, maybe I won't know how to stop. Maybe wind currents will sweep me up to where I don't want to go. I wonder how far I would fly before my strength gave out. Whose cornfield I would land in. Maybe went far away where no one would think to look for me. I could tie a string around your ankle, Max, Janny said. Like you're a kite, and if you go too far, I can reel you back in. Janny and I sure laughed over that outrageous idea. And what would you like to be free to do, Janny? Francisco asked, only a little worried by her reply. Why, live here with you, Janny said, not having to think about it. And you? Francisco had to give it some thought. Finally he replied, go to the plaza for ice cream, a Dairy Whip, chocolate with nuts on top, with you. And I'd like to take Max with us this time. Is that all you want to be free to do? Janny asked him. Francisco's contented face gave her the answer. But there's too much activity on the plaza to have Max right on your shoulder, Francisco. And besides, who knows what some flight of fancy would lead Max to do and all of that excitement. I snapped at a dragonfly and dug the good claw into the downy mold, hiding my eardrum to relieve an itch, waiting for them to come up with a solution. Let's tie a few feet of yarn around our bird's ankle and attach it to my watch band, I heard Francisco say. Like a leash, like insurance, or should I say assurance, that Max's instincts won't lead him to do something foolish. Well, I was peeved by the coarseness of their idea. But still, I couldn't conceive of a better one. Soon we were off for ice cream on the plaza. Waiting our turn to order Janny, Francisco and I stood behind a man, tapping his foot with a familiar cadence. if he hadn't been wearing that oversized straw sombrero that landed squarely across the tops of his ears and the bridge of his nose, concealing his fistful of hair, I would have known for sure who that man was. Yes, sirree, I sure would have. I'll eat the nuts off Francisco's cone, I said, clutching onto his shirt sleeve. No need to order one for me. The man in front of us turned around. It was Sergeant Garcia. He stared at the yarn tied at my ankle, his eyes traveling down to the other end tied to Francisco's watch band. What's this? He asked, pointing to the yarn in disdain. It's just like I told you, isn't it, Max? The sergeant said. The sergeant paid for his ice cream, then confronted me directly when he turned to leave. Remember what I told you, Max? You don't want to be tied up like some old mare or waiting to be fed, do you? He said with a nod toward Janny as Francisco handed her the ice cream cone. You can keep your cornfield idea, Mr. Sergeant, I said. You've been trying to turn my own family against me. I now see what you've been up to. Stupid bird, the sergeant answered, letting yourself be tied up like a dumb mare. Our private arrangement is off. Janny had enough of the sergeant. She smashed her ice cream right into his face. With one chomp of my hook beak, I severed the length of yarn that Janny and Francisco thought was holding me. I made a couple of aggressive swoops around the sergeant's head. He made a quick retreat, the palm of his hand holding his sombrero onto his head as he fled. My adrenaline was pumping. Out of control, I swooped it wider and wider. Francisco and Janny screamed, "No, Max, no!" I looked down upon their anguished faces, but couldn't get my wings under control. After several passes around the plaza, my tired wings were no longer able to flap. I made a soft landing on top of the hot dog vendor's umbrella. How embarrassing. Francisco rescued me and apologized to the hot dog vendor. I am so sorry my wings got carried away, I told him. Is your umbrella okay? Do you want us to buy you a new one? No need, he answered. If I had wings, I'd fly too. Francisco held on to Janny when we walked back to the car. What would she do without him? How many times had he kept her from falling on these stone streets? How many sets of glasses had he saved? How many broken bones? What would I do without Janny and Francisco? What would they do without me? It was me, Max Bird, who made us a family. That sure was a dumb idea, taking a bird out on our list. Why did we do that, Janny asked Francisco. Because Max wanted to be free, remember? But free to do what? We are not free and we like it that way, Francisco said. When we get home, can I get clipped? I asked. This has been too much freedom for me. The next morning, bursting through a halo of the color of sweet mangoes, a sun of the most golden yellow made its home nestled in a velvet sky, the purest of pristine blue. My voice was heard, belting out a hopeful, yearning song whose notes floated out of the house and vibrated through the courtyard. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land I no longer dream of when Janny sings me A lullaby. La, 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 la. Once in a lullaby. I'm done!
That was great.